Ray. Hi, Ray.
In Zoom land. How are you doing?
All right.
I thought I'd talk to you guys separately for a minute because once I get up in front, and then we have our guest today, Ron Bell, and he'll be talking to us about the Monon. Am I saying that right?
Monon.
Monon.
Okay. Okay, the transportation. A number two job, I would say. We've got one station done. We're going to work on another. All right. Well, just a couple of things, just to remind those that are with the board, or any of our members may attend board meetings. At 8:30 on Monday, November the 9th, at Donna's house. Everybody pretty well knows where that is. I won't tell you the address or anything because I don't know it. But anyway, that's what we're going to do. And Becky's Place, I want to thank everybody that helped out with Becky's Place donations. We took about 50 pounds worth of food and $100 to them to help them out. Okay, and then B&L, they keep changing counselors at B&L, so we're going to have to work out our communications with them. That's going to be a problem with the school going to 2 days a week for each class. You know, the senior class, half of it goes for 2 days, and I believe the other half goes for 2 days. So the awkwardness of the COVID problem is going to follow us a little bit. So we'll just have to work the Rotary program to the best of our abilities. So don't give up the ship now. Encourage everybody that you haven't seen for a while to keep in contact with the club. And we're going to meet at the regular time on Thursdays every week. And those that want to come, okay. If you want to be on the Zoom, that's all right too. Anyway, it's good to see all of you that are out there. And just listen in a couple moments. We'll start our program with Ron Bell. You have any questions for me?
And well, Ray, you might tell Rowena that Peggy Julian joined.
Okay.
Peggy Julian's on here.
Yes, hi, John. Thank you.
Okay. Well, it's always good to have you, Peggy.
I just wanted you to tell Rowena so she can list her.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, minutes.
Well,
Rowena heard you. Rowena heard you, John. Heard something.
Okay.
The message is there. The message. We've got 4, and we've got a Tina Ligman. Okay, very good. Nice to have Tina Ligman with us today too. All right. Well, we'll start the meeting in just a couple minutes.
Okay. Yeah, I said in my update this morning, I wasn't sure it was necessary to join, and you know, it's we just have to kill time. But I think it's a lot of fun to talk while we're waiting. You know.
I agree. When I joined one of the meetings that Jim Bright invited me to up in, I guess it was in Bloomington, and they have like a I don't know, 15 or 20 minute period before the official meeting started, and they would, as you would come on and join, of course they had a lot larger number than we do, but they would put you in different rooms with a group of other maybe 3 or 4 people so that you actually could have a conversation like we're doing now. And then when the meeting began official, then at noon or 1 o'clock, whenever it did, then they put all those people back together on the big Zoom. So, you know, you had opportunity to visit with just like, you know, a smaller group and be able to have a conversation. It was nice.
Yep.
Well,
I think I'm going to mute myself now so that I won't make any noise.
I'm gonna.
Our speaker as much time as possible today. So just a couple of little quick announcements. There will be a board meeting November the 9th, that's Monday, at 8:30 a.m. at Donna's house. That's planned for this month's board meeting. We thank everybody who participated with the Place food drive. We took $100 there, and we had approximately 50 pounds of food that I delivered to Vicky's Place for you. All right, and then B&L is changing counselors again, and we have got to we need to readjust the involvement that we have with the counselors out at B&L, so we can continue the Rotary program for young people, exchange type of program, and the Students of the Month program. So that's, we'll continue to work with the committee on that. All right, today we have Ron Bell with us, who's going to talk about the Monon train station rehab. And these cards that you have on the table are to add ideas for the Monon station that need to be worked on. I believe, is that the idea? Debbie, you come on up, and I'm going to let you
That's right.
talk with everybody and then introduce Ron.
Yeah, just jot down some ideas that you've got in your head as the next presentation or you thought about before. What could that renovated become used for? And I will collect cards. If you can't complete your ideas today, then you can email Tina. So you've got Tina's email because John added her to the email for this week, and she is actually listening in as well because she's now Ron's going to present it from the historical side of the station, and Tina knows more about the Indiana trails and the Indiana landmarks side of it. So Tina's going to be staying on for questions and answers at the end of Ron's program. You have questions about the renovation and the future uses and so forth. So yeah, I'll just collect these at the end. Thanks.
Caller. Yeah,
Okay,
let's try that, do testing. We're going to test the sound.
okay,
Test sound. Say testing.
Yes.
You're
yes,
fine. And hey, Ron,
yeah,
Ron, you might tell me what slide you're on. I'm going to share them on do a screen share of your slides. So you just tell me when
okay,
you
I'm on the
slide.
second one. The one that shows the Bedford Monon station after it was rebuilt. The one after that will be the slide about the river bridge. I thank you for inviting me to come speak with you today about the Monon Railroad, although that's not the name of the railroad. It was the Louisville, New Albany, and Chicago Railroad. They stopped at the White River in 1850 because they had to build a bridge over. There was a little town of Juliet that was south of that became a very successful community for about 3 years because they would bring everything up to that end of the railroad, unload it, put it on wagons, take it across the river on ferries, and then take it farther north. The railroad didn't jump the river until 1852. And one of the big things that held them up were the abutments at each side of the river. They needed good stone for that, and there was a young engineer for the civil engineer for the railroad, Davis Harrison, and he found a good deposit about 1.5 miles north of where the bridge was going to be. That site is still there today, although it's abandoned, and it's right across the road from Papa's restaurant. They found that the stone was such good stone that as soon as the railroad was completed, they started taking the stone down to Louisville for construction stone. And 40 years later, they were bragging about the first buildings that had been built out of that were still in very usable shape. when the railroad came to town, they basically had right of way that did not run through the square. It ran up M Street. That's the reason why we had the boulevard grass in the center of this, because that's where the railroad track was supposed to go. And you'll notice that boulevard only went up to 13th Street, because at 1850, that was the north end of Bedford. Well, the town businessmen weren't too happy with the fact that the railroad was going to go up M Street and not through the square, because then they were going to have to haul everything from M Street to the stores, and that was such an inconvenience that they petitioned that the railroad run through the square. Now be careful what you ask for, because you just might get it. The railroad bought a 50-foot frontage on the west side of the courthouse, and they built this 300-foot brick and stone structure to service the railroad. When the first train entered town in 1852, the engineer, who was Lee Allman, when he arrived in town, he blew the whistle for a quarter hour straight to get everybody downtown to see this new oddity that was coming to Bedford. The first passenger train came in a week later, and it was basically a freight car that they had added some board seats on. So that was the first passenger train that came to Bedford in 1852. And the name Monon basically came about in 1886. There was a town of Monon in northern Indiana that had a small stream that ran by it. The stream ran swift and deep, and the Indians called it Monon. Well, at that time, the railroad was basically a transfer line for L&N in Louisville to take perishable goods from the south up to Chicago. And they thought the name Swift Running would be a good nickname for their railroad to encourage more usage of the perishables on their line. Well, about 1895, 1896, the merchants decided that railroad station on the square was not a good thing there. You had passenger trains stopping in the area and blocking everything from 14th Street down to 17th Street. People couldn't get in and out of the stores while they were going. The building had run down, become rat infested. And you can see it from the picture. It needed a little bit of upgrading. So Moses Dunn petitioned them that they move the railroad station north. Well, when they moved it north, it's in the location that it is today, but it was originally, it was planned to be a union station for the Evansville-Richmond Railroad and the Monon, because they crossed within a block of that location. But that didn't happen because the Evansville-Richmond went bust before they built the new station. The Evansville-Richmond line later was sold to John Walsh. He built the large station that we moved down on J Street that building was built in 01.
There's still a station there. There used to be
trash, you didn't take your trash there, that old station.
That's this station.
Huh?
That's this station.
No, is that the one that was moved?
No,
Oh, okay.
no, this one was not moved, but they started making improvements on it. But in about 1902, the freight station on the left had an Excelsior barrel hanging out at the one end that you can still see. It had a lot of oil rags in it. It caught fire. It caught the freight station on fire, and in 10 minutes there was a strong wind and it blew the fire over to the station that they had built where what we call the Monon station is now. It burned the roof out of the building. It damaged all of the walls. And they had to basically start over. And within a week, they had the stonemasons in rebuilding the damaged stone walls. That station existed until about 1926. That is, and this is a station that replaced that. They passed a resolution on January of 1926 that they were going to spend $60,000 on a new station at Bedford, and they were going to put a new freight house across from it for $10,000. But some people think this is the only limestone station on the Monon. There were 4. There was Bedford, the Bloomington station, Lafayette, and then they had one at Monon, Indiana. At that time, there were 4 passenger trains north and 4 passenger trains south every day, which if you remember, if you were here in the 40s and 50s, you can remember all these trains messing up, getting across the tracks in downtown Bedford.
That's every day.
Every day. If the train would run, and that was a problem with the Monon. They had an awful lot of maintenance problems, and there was an old saying, if the Monon didn't have bad luck, they wouldn't have had any luck at all. They went bankrupt when the government was running it during the war, and in 1946, they redeveloped the company under Behringer, who his specialty was going from railroad to railroad that had gone bankrupt and reorganizing them. This F3 engine was one of the first engines that he put on this line, and he spent $7 million in 1946 to dieselize the line and start getting rid of the steam engines. He also bought 500 new box cars. He bought 100 covered cement cars and 100 coal cars. So he was really recapitalizing the running fleet of the railroad. In addition to that, John Behringer, he stayed with the line for 7 years till he basically got done what he wanted. One of the things he wanted to get done was he bought a troop hospital train and transferred it into the new passenger coaches for the Monon line, and they ran on those until the end of the line. The end of the line came in 1971 when they merged with the L&N of Louisville. Things didn't stop there, and it kept changing. One thing that was good about the merger with the L&N is that is when the Milwaukee that also came into Bedford started using the track rightages from Bedford to Louisville for 2 freight trains a day. And those were the long ones that I think we all remember, of 100 some odd cars. For a period of time, Amtrak also used these rails when they were rebuilding the line in other areas. And for a short period of time, they had a station. They used the station at Bedford as a pickup point, but it didn't last very long.
So sometime in the early 70s, Amtrak ran this maybe for a month or 2 months, somewhere along the line.
Yeah.
What it was. And I remember there was a donut shop there on the square. And when they came through, the guy would come out and bring a box of donuts, and they would grab them and go on to the Amtrak station. I had an office at the Citizens National Bank building, so I had a good view of what was going on with the railroads, because I counted them every day.
How many were you counting a day then?
About 10. But it was kind of interesting. Many times, as the train was going by, I would hear a rushing of air. And a few minutes later, the train would stop. A few minutes later, you would see a guy, a repairman, coming with a airline on his shoulder and a wrench, coming down to fix the new airline that had been dragging and broke as it came through town. And I thought, if they have as many brake line breaks the rest of their track as they do in Bedford, they're not going to go very far.
Ray, I told me that story before, and I asked the engineer, he said the problem with Bedford was it caused all these airline breaks because of the roads coming over and keep getting higher than the asphalt. So if you look at it, you've got to round it off. And he said that was the reason why they get more breaks there than they would
That makes sense, because it was a street, so you didn't want that pit, so to speak, between the rails going through there. So, but that made too long an airline too.
Well, the L&N that took over the Monon Road and the other family lines of the L&N all merged with the Seaboard Coastline in 1982. 4 years later, the Seaboard line merged with the CSX group, which was, I think, one of the last that used it, because it was the CSX that transferred the property in Bedford to the Bedford Enterprise Zone on April 23rd, 2004. 2 years later, they leased it to the Lawrence County Solid Waste District, and that's the one that was the last one to use the building. But they moved out in 2014 to the Elliott Stone Company area on Mitchell Road. If you guys have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
You haven't said anything about Milwaukee and Milwaukee Railroad, which ran through Bedford and I guess Brownstown, Seymour, going east and west. They've been bankrupt in the 80s. But you haven't mentioned that. How do they fit into the story?
Glad you asked. I have a book on that. This is a start of from when it was the E&R Railroad up to the end of the time that it was the. Just hold it up. Oh, okay. And the story of John R. Walsh and all the things he did for Bedford was a lot more than just railroad. He came to town because he was a Chicago banker. And he'd financed the Bedford Oolitic Railroad. They called it the Bedford Belt. They went broke. he took that, and they'd put up the oolitic quarries as security for that. Well, he said, if you can raise the money in 90 days, I don't want this damn place. I don't have anything to do with stone. They didn't. Well, he was hung. He ran it for 10 years. And that was the reason that the railroad was improved between here and Seymour and to Elnora. He wanted to get the stone out of here. And the Monon, we said earlier, was interested in the quick chain stuff from Louisville to Chicago. They didn't want to stop all along the road and pick up a few carloads of stone. That slowed it down, that fast train. So he bought the E&R Railroad right away. The right of way was, when he bought it, says it's 2 streaks of rust down a weed patch. And he put millions of dollars into making it into a good standard gauge railroad. And he was so proud of it. He was bringing other people in from other railroads to see what he had done. They're saying, hey, you've made this a first-class railroad. Yes.
So typically, you know, if a railroad ran through a town, that boosted the economy of the town. So did it help Bedford much, or were those trains just passing through?
Well, John did an awful lot for Bedford. He is the one that built the railroad. He used, basically, his railroad line was called the Bedford line because he had planned it to be the home office of the railroad. He built a 400-unit yard up south of where Central Foundry is. He built railroad shops there to refurbish the trains. He had a roundhouse there. He also got into, he's the one that started the Bedford National Bank. And when he got in trouble, he sold it to local men to continue to run it. He encouraged several other businesses to come into town that the stone people later ran out. One of them that he encouraged was a small manufacturer of airplanes, which didn't last very long. A handle factory, he encouraged that to come to town. And there were 4 or 5 others that they're in the book, but I can't remember what they are offhand. So he did more for somebody that we know nothing about. He did more for Bedford than most of the other companies that came in.
Ron, you mentioned that there was actually 4 depots made of limestone.
Yeah.
Bloomington,
Lafayette, and Monon.
Are those still in existence?
Well, I think the Bloomington was tore down when they redeveloped that downtown area.
I know they renovated it. Looks like a depot, it's painted yellow, but that's wood.
That was probably the Illinois line that was farther up in town. The Monon station, one of the engineers decided was going to commit suicide. And the sharpest curve in the line was at the Monon station. He turned the engine over in that building and tore it up. Lafayette, I don't know if that's still in existence or not.
That would be probably valuable information to present for financing, funding, grants, etc.
Mhm.
If Bedford was the only one still in existence.
It very well could be. It very well could be. But that's out of my expertise. I don't know anything about that. Yes.
Well, you know, we had for about a month or two, we had a cement plant east of Bedford, and there was a spur run to that. Who built that spur to the cement plant that I think only operated a month or two?
That was the B&O. Now, they came in a backdoor deal. 1890, there were some quarries, Tanyard and a couple others south of town that were opening up.
What'd you say?
There was some quarries south of Bedford,
Which one? Tanyard?
Tanyard, and there was one or two others that I forget the names of. But they needed a railroad. So they talked the B&O to run a spur across White River to Tanyard, which is maybe a mile north of the river. Well, in 1891, the town fathers went to talk to B&O and says, why don't you bring that on into Bedford? They did. I live on the east edge of town, and that's my driveway.
Well, one thing, I own part of 10-Yard Branch,
Oh, okay.
out on Palestine Road. My property line includes, part of the 10-Yard Branch,
Well, is that north of Palestine?
yes. Half mile probably. And
Well, that's another
and
thing
there's
I'm
a button
interested in.
There going over that branch where there was a bridge there at one time. And,
Well, you can run most of that right of way into town from, I think it's Sunny Acres Drive over to South I Street. They're now using it as a road for a housing project.
So yeah, you could, yeah, the railroad bed is still in existence, and it's kind of interesting because part of that railroad bed, there's probably 100-foot trestle, so to speak. It's all filled, but it goes under another branch. I don't know. It dumps into Leatherwood Creek, but you could ride a horse through that culvert, I guess you could say.
Are you talking about the one south of 20th Street?
No, this is on from Sunny Acres.
Oh, south of there. Okay.
So, and it goes all the way. There was a big cut in the old railroad property that ended up at the cement plant.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I've ridden horses through there a lot of times. It's just a beautiful ride through that area.
Is it south or north?
It's north of Sunny Acres.
Yeah.
I never could. It was also south of Sunny Acres, but it really wasn't open.
When did we start this Monon restoration? When did we start this getting together?
About a year ago, I think.
A year.
And apparently, some of the people that seem to be the most interested in it are the same group of people that opened up the Milwaukee Trail.
Now Tina's on the Zoom meeting. She's available now. Well, if Ron's finished.
I'm done.
So Tina's available for questions and answers about this renovation. Yeah, she can hear me, I guess.
Yeah, I couldn't hear all the questions, but so yes, my group, and actually I wrote the grant to get Indiana Landmarks to come in and do an assessment of what it would take to restore the depot. And the report was about 50 pages long. So that's what I took, and I did that summary that I sent out to all of you. And we would love to see it restored. And we thought it could kind of be a hub for the Milwaukee Trail that we're helping to develop. But screen, but it could be used for a whole lot of other things. I mean, if we just had a little kiosk there, we would be happy. And then it could be used for any number of other things in the community. So unless we have a big use for it, it's going to be hard to restore it just so we could have a kiosk and starting place for it. So that's why in this report that we had done, that's his big thing. Unless you have a use for it, you're not going to get the money. You're not going to be able to maintain it. So that's why Debbie had such a good idea to get those little cards and to have you all help us think of who long-term could use, because that's a big part of it. I mean, we can get some grant money, but it's still going to take a lot of interest and money from the community to help it make this happen. But it's a wonderful old building. I mean, Ron had some awesome pictures of the outside, but the inside is also very special. It has high cantilever ceilings with some really nice features that most of these depots didn't have. This was an especially nice depot, and it stood up over time, even though it has been abused a lot. So we'd like to save it.
Tina, what's the price tag to renovate?
Yeah, it was on that sheet that all of you should have gotten, but it's about $836,000 is what he's estimating it would take to bring it back to.
836,000 to
And
renovate.
it's, yeah, and it's broken down where that money would go on that paper. Did everybody get one of those papers, or I emailed it to those of you that are on the Zoom call?
It's on the paper that we have. Yeah. Well, thank you very much. That's excellent. And Ron, thank you for the pictures and your explanation as well. You're knowledgeable about this, the Monon station. And we thank you. Yeah. We thank everybody for coming today, and the things that we say and do as members of the Rotary Club. This is a fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendship? And will it be beneficial to all concerned? And is it fun? Thank you so much for joining today. This concludes our meeting. And if you have any ideas, don't forget those cards that were passed out. Write down your ideas for the Monon restoration.
I'll pick them up.
And Debbie will pick it up. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Thank you,
Keep in
Ron.
touch.
That was very interesting, Ron. I enjoyed hearing all your information. Thank you.
What are we doing about paying the bills?
Thank you, Tina. Thank you, and Ron.
Thank you,
both.
Tina. Good to see you again, Tina.
You too.
Thank you.
We'll talk later,
I'm
John.
going to set this here, Jim.
Okay. Good seeing you, Mike, or Julia. I really, I missed seeing you guys last week. So, I'm pulling the plug.
All righty. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you, Jim.